When I found a tube of personal lubricant hidden deep in my wife's underwear drawer, I knew something was wrong. Susan and I hadn't been intimate in over 2 years. But when I discovered who she was using it with, my entire world collapsed. It wasn't just a stranger. It was Derek, our daughter's husband. Susan wasn't just a cheating wife. She was a woman willing to destroy her own family. They wanted to play games with my life, fine, but they had no idea who they were messing with. You see, I spent 40 years managing hardware store. I know how to fix things and I know how to break them. What I did to them next didn't just end the affair. It sent them both to the emergency room, humiliated them in front of the entire neighborhood, and exposed a crime so dark it left the police speechless. Before I tell you exactly how, I swapped that bottle and made them regret the day they were born. Please subscribe to the channel. Trust me, you need to hear this story to warn others about the predators hiding in plain sight. My name is Jim Patterson, and this is how I discovered my wife of 38 years was planning to kill me, and how I used a tube of industrial glue to stop her. The moment I knew my life was a lie happened on a Friday afternoon. For weeks, Susan had been acting strange. She's a 59-year-old woman who used to greet me at the door with a smile. Suddenly, she couldn't look me in the eye. She was guarding her phone like it was the nuclear launch codes. She started wearing expensive perfume again, something she hadn't done since our 20th anniversary. Then there was Derek Martinez, our son-in-law. He's 33, a landscaper, and married to our daughter Jessica. He started showing up at our house constantly. He always had an excuse. He needed to borrow tools. He needed to check the sprinkler. He was worried about the palm trees. But here's the thing. Derek only came over when he thought I was working late. That Friday, I came home early with a migraine. I saw Derek's white pickup truck parked across the street, not in the driveway. Strange. I walked quietly into the house. I heard voices in the kitchen. It was Susan's laugh, but not the laugh I knew. This was younger, flirtatious. "You're terrible," I heard her say. Then Derek's deep chuckle followed. I walked in. Susan jumped up so fast her chair screeched against the floor. Derek was leaning against my counter, drinking coffee from my favorite mug, looking perfectly relaxed. "Jim," Susan's voice was too high, too bright. "You're home early." Derek flashed that charming smile of his. "Just checking the irrigation. Saw some brown spots on the lawn." It was a reasonable explanation, but the air in the room was thick with tension. Susan's cheeks were flushed. They had startled like teenagers caught skipping school. Derek left quickly, but I saw the look that passed between them. It was a look of intimacy, a look that said, "We'll finish this later." The next morning, looking for my reading glasses, I opened Susan's dresser drawer. That's when my hand brushed against it. A tube of high-end lubricant still in the packaging. I stared at it. My heart started hammering against my ribs. Susan and I were effectively roommates at this point. So why did she have that? And why was it hidden under her silk nightgown? I put it back exactly how I found it. But as I looked at my wife sleeping peacefully, I realized I was sleeping next to a stranger. I needed proof, and I knew exactly how to get it. Jim said Monday morning I kissed Susan goodbye. Her lips were cold. As I drove to Home Depot, my mind was racing. I've spent 20 years in retail management. I know about loss prevention. I know about surveillance. During my lunch break, I went to an electronics store and bought a high-end digital voice recorder. It was voice-activated and could record for hours. The clerk asked if I was recording lectures. I just said, something like that. I called Susan that afternoon. "Hey honey, I'm working late tonight. Inventory in the garden center. Don't wait up." "Oh, okay," she said. I heard the relief in her voice. It made me sick. "I'll just have a quiet night." I parked my truck 3 blocks away and hiked back through the neighborhood backyards like a criminal. I let myself in through the back door. The house was quiet, but I could hear the shower running upstairs. Susan was getting ready. I hid the recorder behind the books on the living room shelf. It was invisible unless you knew where to look. I tested it once, crystal clear. Then I grabbed a water bottle from the kitchen just as Susan came downstairs. She looked stunning. She was wearing a dress I hadn't seen in years. Makeup done, hair styled. "Jim," she asked, startled, "I thought you were working." "Forgot my water," I said, keeping my face neutral. "You look nice. Going somewhere." "Just dinner with the girls," she lied. "Linda and Carol." I left, drove back to my hiding spot, and waited. 10 minutes later, Derek's truck pulled up. He didn't knock. She opened the door before he even reached the step. I watched from down the street as my wife ushered my son-in-law into my home. The next day, I sat in my truck in the Home Depot parking lot. I had the recorder in my hand. I was terrified to press play, but I had to know. I put the headphones on. At first, silence. Then the front door opened. I was starting to think you weren't coming, Susan's voice said, soft, lover-like. Sorry, baby. Traffic was murder, Derek replied. I listened to them moving around, the sounds of them being together. I fast-forwarded, my stomach churning. I wanted to throw up. But then the conversation shifted. The tone changed from romantic to serious. So did you call the insurance company? Derek asked. I froze. I did, Susan replied. The policy is definitely $500,000, and I'm the sole beneficiary. Good, Derek said. And Jim, does he suspect anything? He's clueless, she laughed. A cruel, dismissive laugh. He thinks I'm going through a phase. He has no idea I found his blood pressure medication. I pressed pause. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped the recorder. Blood pressure medication. I didn't have high blood pressure. I was healthy. I hit play again. The pills I got from my contact, Derek said. They look identical to his vitamin, but they'll spike his pressure gradually. In 3 months, massive heart attack. At his age, nobody will question it. 500,000, Susan whispered dreamily. We can go to Costa Rica, buy that beach house. And Jessica, Derek asked, she won't suspect. She's too busy with her paramedic job, Susan said. Besides, she thinks you're a saint. I ripped the headphones off. I sat there in the parking lot surrounded by pallets of lumber and potting soil, and I screamed. They weren't just having an affair. They were murdering me, slowly, systematically, my wife, and the man I welcomed into my family. I rushed home and checked my vitamin bottle. The pills looked the same, but the markings were slightly different. I flushed them all down the toilet. Susan was sleeping next to me that night, dreaming of a beach house bought with my death money. She thought I was boring old Jim. She thought I was stupid. She was wrong. Jim said, I couldn't just react. If I confronted them now, they'd deny it. They'd hide the evidence. I needed to destroy them completely. I needed to know who Derek really was. The next morning, I called in sick. I followed Derek. He didn't go to a landscaping job. He went to a grocery store, bought a small bag of items, and then drove to an upscale neighborhood called Palma City. He pulled into the driveway of a massive Mediterranean-style house. A woman answered the door. She was older, maybe 60, silver hair, expensive jewelry. It was Mrs. Elena Rodriguez, a wealthy widow from 3 streets over. She hugged Derek. She kissed him. It wasn't a friendly kiss. Derek stayed for an hour. When he left, he looked disheveled. Mrs. Rodriguez looked happy. I followed him to Hyde Park, another house, another wealthy older woman. Then to Westchase, another one. By noon, I realized the truth. Derek wasn't a landscaper. He was a gigolo, a predator. He was targeting lonely, wealthy, older women. He was seducing them, likely draining their bank accounts and moving on to the next. Susan wasn't the love of his life. She was just another mark. But she was the mark with a husband who had a $500,000 insurance policy. I drove to Mrs. Rodriguez's house. I knocked on the door. Jim, she asked, surprised, is everything okay? Elena, I need to ask you something. Are you involved with Derek Martinez? She turned pale. I don't know what you mean. I saw him here. Elena, Derek is my son-in-law, and he's sleeping with my wife. She staggered back. The denial crumbled instantly. She broke down. He said he loved me. He said his business was struggling. I gave him $15,000 for equipment. Did you change your will? I asked. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. He helped me update it. I left him $25,000. My blood boiled. This man was a monster. He was bleeding these women dry and waiting for them to die. I spent the next 2 days tracking down the other. Margaret in Hyde Park, $30,000. Patricia in Westchase, paying his rent for an apartment he didn't live in. Linda in South Tampa, she bought him a new truck. He had stolen over $100,000. And now, he was going to kill me for the big payout. That's when the sadness evaporated. The fear vanished. All that was left was cold, hard anger. They wanted to destroy me. No, I was going to end it. I went into my garage. I looked at my tools, my chemicals, my adhesives. I formulated a plan. It wouldn't just be revenge. It would be a public execution of their reputation. The plan was simple, but it had to be perfect. They used intimacy as a weapon. I would use it as a trap. I went to the commercial supply room at my store. I picked up a tube of industrial-strength construction adhesive, the kind used for bonding concrete and steel. The label had a skull and crossbones on it. Skin contact requires immediate medical intervention. It was clear. It was odorless, and it had the exact same consistency as the lubricant Susan hid in her drawer. I also grabbed a small Bluetooth speaker, smoke detector battery, and some remote trigger components from the electrical aisle. Sunday night, while Susan was asleep, I went to the garage. I carefully emptied Susan's lubricant into the sink. Then I filled the tube with the industrial glue. I cleaned the cap, made sure it looked pristine, placed it back in her drawer. Next, I rigged the house. I hid the Bluetooth speaker behind the living room couch. I installed a secondary smoke detector, one I could trigger remotely with a switch I'd built. I downloaded an audio file to my phone, the sound of people screaming in a fire. Tuesday was their day. I told Susan I had inventory again. "Okay, honey," she said. She was practically vibrating with excitement. I parked down the block. At 3:15 p.m., Derek's truck arrived. I waited. I gave them time. I needed them to be comfortable. I needed them to reach for that too. At 4:30 p.m., the music started inside the house. At 5:15 p.m., I heard the drawer open through the open bedroom window. I closed my eyes. This is it. I gave it 10 minutes. Then the voices changed. "Wait," Derek said. "Something feels wrong." "What do you mean?" Susan asked. "I can't. We're stuck." "Stuck? Don't be silly." "No, Susan. I mean, we are literally bonded." What was in that tube? Panic, pure, unfiltered panic. "I can't move," she screamed. "It burns. Get off me." "I'm trying. It's tearing the skin." They were fused together. The industrial adhesive had set. They were helpless, naked, and trapped in the bed of the man they planned to murder. It was time for the grand finale. I pulled out my remote. I pressed the button. The smoke alarm shrieked. It cut through the quiet neighborhood like a knife. Then I hit play on the Bluetooth speaker. "Help, fire, we're trapped. Someone help US." The recording was loud, terrifying. Doors flew open all down the street. Mrs. Rodriguez ran out. Mr. Chen grabbed his phone. "Jim's house," someone yelled. "There are people inside. Hear them screaming." Within minutes, a crowd had gathered on my lawn. They could hear the smoke alarm. They could hear the screams from the speaker. And they saw Derek's truck. "Isn't that the son-in-law's truck?" Mrs. Williams asked. "Why is he there if Jim is at work?" Sirens began to wail. First the police, then the fire trucks, and then the ambulance. I saw the unit number, Rescue 12. My heart broke a little, but this was necessary. Rescue 12 was my daughter's unit. Jessica was the lead paramedic. She jumped out, looking professional and terrified for her parents. "Fire department, we're coming in," she yelled. They broke down the door with a sledgehammer. Jessica ran in. "Mom, Dad." "Up here," Derek screamed from the bedroom. "Help us." Jessica sprinted up the stairs. She kicked open the bedroom door, and she froze. There was no fire. There was no smoke. There was just her husband and her mother, naked, in bed, and they were glued together. I walked up the driveway just as the neighbors were whispering. I played the part perfectly, the shocked husband coming home to chaos. "What's happening?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Where is Susan?" Inside the room, Jessica was staring at them. Her world was ending. "Jessica," Derek whimpered, "I can explain." "Don't," she said. Her voice was cold as ice. "Just don't speak." Captain Morrison, the fire chief, walked in. He looked at the situation, looked at Jessica, and sighed. "This is a medical extraction. We need solvent." Jessica went into professional mode. She had to. She called for acetone and adhesive remover. She had to supervise the separation of her cheating husband from her cheating mother. While they worked, I stood outside with the neighbor. "I don't understand," I told Mrs. Rodriguez, wiping a fake tear. "I trusted him." Then they brought them out. They couldn't separate them fully in the room. They had to transport them on gurneys, covered in sheets, but everyone knew. The paparazzi, well, the neighbors with iPhone were flashing away. Mrs. Rodriguez stepped forward. "Derek Martinez," she shouted, "you predator." Derek hid his face. Susan was sobbing in shame. Jessica walked out behind them, looking shell-shocked. "I'm sorry, Dad," she whispered to me. "I had no idea." "I know, sweetheart," I said. "I know. I met them at Tampa General Hospital. The doctors managed to separate them using heavy-duty solvents. Their skin was raw, red, and incredibly painful. I went into Susan's room. She was crying. "Jim, I'm so sorry. It was a mistake." "A mistake?" I asked softly. "You planned a life with him." "No, I swear." The nurse came in. Mrs. Patterson, here is a soothing gel for the skin irritation. Apply it liberally. She left a tube of clear gel on the table. I'll let you rest, I said. I walked out. I checked the hallway clear. I ducked into the bathroom. From my pocket, I pulled a tube I had prepared earlier. It was capsaicin cream, the stuff made from chili pepper used for deep muscle pain. But this was the concentrated stuff. It burns like fire if you put it on sensitive skin. I switched the labels. I went back into Susan's room while she was dozing and swapped the tube. Then I did the exact same thing to Derek in the next room. I sat in the waiting room with Jessica. 10 minutes later, the screaming started again. AHHH-ITBURNS. Susan was thrashing. Derek was howling. The gel, Susan screamed. It's like acid. Doctors rushed in. Jessica smelled it immediately. That's capsaicin. Who gave them pepper cream for open wound? It must be a manufacturing error, I said, looking concerned. While they were writhing in agony, the elevator doors opened. It wasn't over. Mrs. Rodriguez walked in, and she wasn't alone. She had Margaret, she had Patricia, she had Linda. The Derek Martinez Victim Club had arrived. They marched up to Jessica. Jessica, Mrs. Rodriguez said, we need to talk about your husband. They laid it all out. The fraud, the fake business, the stolen money, the will change it. Jessica listened, her face hardening into stone. Then Detective Morrison arrived. I had given him the recorder. He walked into Derek's room. Derek was still crying from the pepper cream. Derek Martinez, the detective said, you are under arrest for fraud, grand larceny, and conspiracy to commit murder. Murder, Derek choked out. We have the tapes, Derek. You and Susan discussing the blood pressure pill, the insurance money. I watched as they handcuffed him to the bed. Then they went next door and handcuffed Susan. Jessica stood by my side. She didn't cry. She just watched them get dragged away. Did you know, Dad, she asked me later, about the recording? I found it by accident, I lied. God works in mysterious ways. The story made the front page. Glue trap cheaters arrested for murder plot. Derek got 28 years. The judge didn't take kindly to him preying on the elderly. Susan got 15 years for conspiracy. I divorced her immediately. I kept the house, the pension, and yes, the life insurance policy remained firmly in my name. Jessica moved back in with me for a while. We healed together. She's a district supervisor now. She's strong. She realized that losing a husband like Derek was actually a gain. As for me, I'm still at Home Depot. I'm a bit of a local legend now. Customers come in and ask me for advice on it, and sometimes advice on spotting liars. I learned something important through all this. When betrayal hits you, you have two choices. You can let it destroy you, or you can use it to build something stronger. They underestimated. They thought I was just an old man who sold lumber. They forgot that wisdom comes with age and that you should never, ever mess with a man who has access to industrial supply. God has a plan for justice. Sometimes that justice looks like a judge and jury, and sometimes it looks like a tube of superglue and a smoke alarm. If you've ever been underestimated, or if you've ever had to fight for your own justice, let me know in the comments. And please, share this story. You never know who needs to hear it to spot the wolves hiding in their own home. Thanks for watching. I'm Jim Patterson, and remember, the truth always sticks.